Dr. Jisoo Park stood at her desk, eyes fixed on the complex equations that filled her tablet screen. The soft blue glow illuminated her face in the dim laboratory as she worked late into the night. Outside her window, stars twinkled over Seoul's skyline, but her attention remained on the mathematical formulas that had consumed her work for the past 5 years. Her fingers moved rapidly, adjusting variables in the three-dimensional model floating above her desk. The spacecraft design rotated slowly, its unusual curves and angles unlike anything humans had built before. "Still here, Dr. Park." Jisoo looked up to see Dr. Hyun Lee entering the lab, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She accepted one gratefully. "These hyperbolic manifolds are giving me trouble," she said, pointing to a section of the model where 2 curved surfaces intersected. "The mathematics works perfectly, but the engineering team says it's impossible to build." Hyun studied the model. "Maybe they're right. No one has ever built a spacecraft based on non-Euclidean geometry before." "That's exactly why it will work," Jisoo replied, her voice filled with quiet confidence. "Conventional physics can only take us so far. If we want to truly bend spacetime, we need to think beyond traditional approaches." Hyun shook his head but smiled. "You've always seen patterns where others see only chaos." The conversation was interrupted by Jisoo's phone ringing. She frowned at the screen. "It's Director Kang." At this hour. 5 minutes later, both scientists were rushing through the corridors of the Korea Aerospace Research Institute. They joined a crowd of colleagues gathering in the main observation room, all staring at the large screen on the wall. "What's happening?" Jisoo asked a nearby technician. "Something entered Earth's orbit 20 minutes ago," he replied without taking his eyes off the screen. "It's not one of ours." The image on screen showed a metallic object, its surface reflecting sunlight as it moved steadily in orbit around Earth. Its shape defied conventional aerodynamics, smooth in some areas, angular in others, with sections that seemed to bend in impossible ways. Director Kang stood at the front of the room, speaking rapidly into a phone. When he hung up, he addressed the silent crowd. "The object has been confirmed by NASA, ESA, and the Chinese Space Agency. It's not from Earth," he announced, "and it's sending the signal." The room burst into murmurs. Jisoo felt her heart racing. First contact, the moment humanity had both hoped for and feared. "The signal contains mathematical sequences," Director Kang continued. "Dr. Park, we need your team on this immediately." Over the next 12 hours, Jisoo and her colleagues worked tirelessly to decode the signal. It contained prime numbers, geometric principles, and finally, a simple language key. "They're telling us they want to meet," Jisoo explained to the emergency committee that had gathered. "And they've chosen a location, the International Space Station." 3 days later, humanity watched as the alien craft approached the ISS. A small delegation from Earth waited inside, including Jisoo, who had been selected for her mathematical expertise. The docking sequence completed with perfect precision. After a tense moment, the airlock opened. The beings that entered were not what anyone had expected. They stood upright on 2 legs, but their blue skin had a metallic sheen. Their faces featured 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and instead of a mouth, they had what appeared to be vibrating membranes. "We are the Galactic Confederation," said the foremost alien, the membrane producing perfect English. "I am Ambassador Taka." Formal introductions were made. Jisoo found herself fascinated by their technology, the translator devices they wore, the flexible material of their suits that seemed to shift and adapt. "We have observed your planet for some time," Taka explained once pleasantries were exchanged. "Your species has progressed quickly. We come to evaluate whether Earth is ready to join the wider galactic community." "What criteria do you use for evaluation?" asked the UN Secretary General. "Technological advancement, cultural stability, resource management," Taka replied. "We have found that species at your development stage benefit from guidance." Something in his tone bothered Jisoo. There was an undercurrent of condescension. When the meeting moved to discussion of Earth's technological capabilities, Jisoo was invited to present her research. She brought up her spacecraft designs on the holographic display. "Our new propulsion system is based on hyperbolic geometry," she explained, highlighting the complex curves of her model. "These mathematical principles allow us to create a drive that might one day bend space-time in ways our current physics only theorizes." The aliens exchanged glances. Taka tilted his head. "You base your designs on abstract mathematics?" he asked. "Without practical application." "The mathematics is the application," Jisoo replied. "These curves represent manifolds in higher dimensional space that—" "Interesting," Taka interrupted, his tone suggesting the opposite. "In our experience, developing species focus on practical engineering first. Theoretical applications come much later." Jisoo felt her cheeks warm. Human history is full of theoretical discoveries that later proved practical. Einstein's relativity seemed abstract until— "We understand," Taka said, cutting her off again. "Your approach is unique." The meeting continued, but Jisoo remained quiet, troubled by the exchange. As the humans prepared to return to Earth, Taka approached her privately. "Your mathematics," he said. "It is considered important on your world." "Essential," Jisoo replied. "Mathematics is the language of the universe." Taka's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "A charming perspective, but practical application drives progress. Your species might advance faster if you focused on engineering solutions rather than theoretical fantasies." Jisoo watched the aliens depart, their ship moving with incredible speed. As the Earth team boarded their shuttle, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, not just humanity's first contact with alien life, but a fundamental misunderstanding between two ways of seeing the universe. "They think we're primitive," she told Hyun as they strapped in for the return journey. "But I think they've missed something important about humans." "What's that?" Jisoo smiled. "We've always reached for the stars before we knew how to get there. Our greatest strength isn't building things. It's imagining what could be." 3 months after first contact, life had almost returned to normal for Dr. Jisoo Park. Despite the world-changing revelation that aliens existed, her daily routine remained largely the same: long hours in the lab, complex equations, and frequent arguments with the engineering team about her unconventional designs. "Dr. Park, you have visitors," her assistant called from the doorway one morning. Jisoo looked up from her computer, surprised to see Director Kang, accompanied by 2 men in black suits, government officials she had met during the first contact debriefings. "The Confederation has returned," Director Kang said without preamble. "They're asking for you specifically." 2 hours later, Jisoo found herself in a secure conference room at Kerry headquarters. Ambassador Taka sat across from her, flanked by 2 other blue-skinned aliens. Their previously confident demeanor had changed. Taka's posture was tense, and his 4 eyes blinked rapidly in what Jisoo now recognized as a sign of stress. "Dr. Park, we face a situation that requires alternative perspectives." Taka began, his translator device converting his vibrating membrane speech into crisp Korean. With a gesture, he activated a holographic display in the center of the table. A 3-dimensional map of space appeared, showing various star systems connected by glowing lines. "These are our primary trade routes through this sector," Taka explained. "For the past 60 days, we have experienced disruptions." He touched the display, and strange distortions appeared along several routes, swirling, shifting patterns that looked like ripples in fabric. "Spatial anomalies," one of the other aliens added. "They appear without warning, disrupt navigation systems, and have caused several vessels to be lost." Jisoo leaned forward, studying the patterns with growing interest. "What causes them?" "Unknown," Taka admitted. "Our science cannot predict their appearance or behavior. Ships that enter these distortions report instrument failures and spatial disorientation. Some never emerge." "Why come to me?" Jisoo asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. Taka's eyes fixed on her. Our scientists approach problems through practical application and empirical testing. After 90 failed attempts to navigate or predict these anomalies, one of our researchers suggested a different perspective might be valuable. Jisoo couldn't help but feel a hint of satisfaction at their predicament. You need my impractical mathematics. We request Earth's assistance, Taka said, avoiding direct agreement with her statement. The Confederation is prepared to offer technology exchanges in return. Jisoo studied the anomalies more closely. These aren't random patterns, she said after several minutes. They're following mathematical rules, just not ones you're looking for. She pointed to one particularly complex distortion. See how it curves here, then inverts. These are topological manifolds, like complex mathematical curves folding through multiple dimensions. The aliens exchanged glances. You can see patterns in this chaos, asked the alien to Taka's right. It's not chaos, Jisoo replied. It's geometry, very complex geometry, but still following rules. The kind of mathematics humans have been studying theoretically for centuries. Jisoo turned to Director Kang. I'll need my team. Dr. Hyun Lee, Dr. Minho Kim, had access to the quantum computing cluster. 1 week later, Jisoo's small office had transformed into an international command center. Screens covered the walls, displaying data streams from Confederation ships and Earth's most powerful telescopes. Hyun worked at a station nearby, running simulations on the quantum computer. The anomalies aren't static, Jisoo explained to the gathered team of human scientists and alien observers. They're dynamic expressions of higher dimensional mathematics. Think of them as four-dimensional objects passing through our three-dimensional space. She brought up a visualization on the main screen, a complex, shifting pattern of curves and intersections. We've been modeling them using non-Euclidean geometry and fractal mathematics, she continued, and we're starting to see predictable patterns. Taka stepped forward. Can you predict where they will appear next? Better than that, Jisoo replied with quiet confidence. I think we can navigate through them. She pulled up her spacecraft designs, the same ones Taka had dismissed months ago. The mathematics I've been working on isn't just theoretical. These hyperbolic curves in my engine design match the patterns we're seeing in the anomalies. If we apply these principles to your navigation systems, I believe we can safely pass through these distortions. Impossible, stated one of the Confederation scientists. Our ships cannot be redesigned so quickly. We don't need to redesign the ships, Hyun interjected. Just the navigation algorithms. The hardware can stay the same. For 3 days and nights, Jisoo's team worked alongside the alien engineers, adapting their mathematical models to the Confederation's technology. The humans found themselves explaining concepts that they had considered basic, non-Euclidean geometry, topological invariance, fractal dimensions, to beings whose technology far surpassed Earth's. How can your species understand these abstractions when your practical technology is so limited? Asked one alien engineer. Hyun smiled as he continued typing code. Humans have always been good at imagining things we can't yet build. Finally, a test was arranged. A small Confederation vessel equipped with the new navigation system would attempt to traverse a small anomaly that had remained stable enough for testing. Jisoo watched anxiously from the control room as the ship approached the swirling distortion in space. The vessel paused at the edge, then slowly entered the anomaly. For 2 minutes, there was no signal. The room fell silent. Taka's membrane vibrated rapidly as he spoke quietly to his colleagues. Then, a transmission broke through. Navigation successful. We've emerged on the other side. All systems functioning. A cheer erupted from the human scientists. Jisoo let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Taka approached her, his posture now different. Less rigid, more respectful. Your mathematics has succeeded where our practical science could not, he admitted. Perhaps there is value in theoretical thinking after all. Jisoo nodded, but her mind was already elsewhere. Something about the anomalies still bothered her. Their patterns seemed too perfect, too structured. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly. "These anomalies aren't natural phenomena. They're too ordered, too intentional." "What are you suggesting?" Taka asked, all four eyes focused intently on her. Jisoo turned to face him directly. "I think someone, or something, created them, and I think they're watching to see who can understand them." The morning sun streamed through the windows of the newly established Joint Space Anomaly Research Center in Daejeon. What had begun as Jisoo's small lab now occupied an entire floor of the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. Scientists from around the world worked alongside Confederation engineers, creating an unusual blend of human theoretical thinking and alien practical knowledge. Jisoo stood before her assembled team, feeling both pride and pressure. The successful test navigation had been just the beginning. Now the Confederation wanted a permanent solution. "We need to expand our team," she announced. "The anomalies are growing more complex. Our current models aren't keeping up." She displayed images showing new anomalies that had appeared in 3 different sectors of space. These were larger and exhibited more intricate patterns than the previous ones. "I've asked for reinforcements," she continued. "The best minds in theoretical mathematics and physics." On cue, the door opened and 3 people entered. Dr. Minho Kim, a slender man with thoughtful eyes who had revolutionized topology studies at Seoul National University. Dr. Do-Hyun Choi, a theoretical physicist whose work on quantum gravity had earned him global recognition, and Dr. Subin Kang, a computational mathematician who had designed algorithms that could process multi-dimensional data sets. After introductions, Jisoo divided them into teams. Minho would work on modeling the topological structure of the anomalies. Do-Hyun would develop theories on the physics governing their behavior. Subin would create new algorithms to predict their movements. Hyun would continue adapting their findings to Confederation technology. "The aliens rely on practical physics," she told them when they gathered for their first strategy session. "Their approach is to observe, test, and apply. But these anomalies follow mathematical rules that exist beyond simple observation. Non-Euclidean geometry and higher dimensional manifolds." Minho nodded. "Concepts humans have studied theoretically for centuries without practical application." "Until now," Jisoo smiled. The work was intense. Days blended into nights as the team pushed the boundaries of mathematical understanding. Minho created beautiful, complex models of the anomalies, showing how they folded through dimensions. Do-Hyun developed equations describing how they interacted with normal space. Subin's algorithms grew more sophisticated, incorporating fractal patterns to predict the anomalies' movements. The Confederation engineers watched with a mixture of confusion and growing respect. Their advanced technology seemed almost primitive when faced with the abstract thinking of the human mathematicians. "You visualize these concepts without building them first?" asked one Confederation scientist as Minho sketched a 5-dimensional projection on a whiteboard. "Mathematics is the language of the universe," Minho replied. "We don't need to build something to know it's true." 2 weeks into their collaboration, Subin burst into Jisoo's office, excitement clear on her face. "I found a pattern in the anomalies' appearances," she announced, pulling up data on Jisoo's screen. "They're not random at all. They follow a complex sequence based on prime number distributions and Fibonacci spirals." "That's impossible in nature," Jisoo said, studying the patterns. "This confirms my suspicion. These anomalies are created intentionally." The next day, they presented their findings to the Confederation representatives. Taka and his colleagues listened as Jisoo explained their theory. "The anomalies are artificial," she concluded. "They're being generated by something or someone with an advanced understanding of mathematics, perhaps even more advanced than our own." "To what purpose?" Taka asked, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "We don't know yet," Jisoo admitted, "but understanding that they're designed rather than natural phenomena changes our approach." With this new perspective, the team refined their navigation system. If the anomalies followed mathematical rules, then those rules could be predicted and navigated, no matter how complex. 3 days later, they were ready for a more ambitious test. A Confederation ship would attempt to traverse not just one anomaly, but a cluster of them. A journey that would normally take weeks could be completed in hours if successful. The control room was tense as the ship approached the first anomaly. Displays showed the swirling, folding space ahead, beautiful and terrifying in its complexity. Entering anomaly field now, came the pilot's voice over the comm system. Navigation system is functioning, following the mathematical pathway. On the main screen, they watched as the ship followed a precise course through the distortion, moving along invisible lines that existed only in the equations Jisu's team had created. "It's working," Hyun whispered, gripping the edge of his console. The ship emerged from the first anomaly, immediately adjusting course for the second, then the third. Each time, the navigation system predicted the shifting patterns and found safe passage. When the ship finally completed its journey, having traversed 7 anomalies in just under 4 hours, the control room erupted in cheers. Even the normally reserved Confederation officials showed signs of excitement, their skin shifting to brighter blue tones. "Remarkable," Taka said, approaching Jisu. "Your team has accomplished in weeks what our scientists couldn't solve in months." Jisu nodded, but her attention was on the data streaming in from the test flight. "Look at this," she said, pointing to unusual readings. When the ship passed through the 4th anomaly, there was a change in the pattern, almost like a response. A response. Taka leaned closer. "You believe the anomalies reacted to our ship?" "Not to the ship," Jisu said slowly, her mind racing with implications. "To our navigation method. To the mathematics we used." That evening, as most of the team celebrated their success, Jisu remained in her office, reviewing the data again and again. There was something there, a pattern within the pattern, a response to their mathematical approach. Hyun found her still working past midnight. "You should rest," he said, placing a cup of coffee beside her. "We've won." Jisu looked up, her eyes bright with a new realization. "This isn't about winning, Hyun. The anomalies change when we navigated through them using their own mathematical language." "What are you saying?" "I think they're trying to communicate," she replied, pulling up new models on her screen. "And I think they recognized our mathematics as a form of communication." "Who is trying to communicate?" Hyun asked, bewildered. Jisu turned to him, her face alight with discovery. "Not who. What? I think the anomalies themselves are sentient." The conference room fell silent as Jisu presented her theory. Around the table sat her team, Confederation representatives, and government officials from 5 Earth nations. The holographic display in the center showed rotating models of the space anomalies, their complex patterns shifting and flowing. "The data from our successful navigation tests shows something extraordinary," Jisu explained, highlighting sections of code on a side screen. "The anomalies changed their patterns after we passed through them. Not randomly, but in direct response to our mathematical approach." Taka leaned forward, his 4 eyes focused intently on the display. "You believe these are communication attempts?" "I believe the anomalies themselves are sentient," Jisu replied firmly. "Or rather, they're manifestations of sentient entities that exist as mathematical constructs." Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even in a world now familiar with alien life, the concept seemed far-fetched. "Dr. Park," began one of the government officials, "are you suggesting that living beings exist as mathematics?" "Why not?" Minho cut in. "We already accept that life can be carbon-based, silicon-based, or even energy-based. Why not information-based? Pure mathematics given consciousness?" Jisu nodded gratefully to her colleague. "Think about it. These anomalies follow precise mathematical rules. They respond to mathematical input. They're testing our ability to understand their language." "What evidence do you have?" asked a Confederation scientist. his tone skeptical. Jisoo signaled to Subin, who brought up new data on the main screen. When our ships successfully navigated using our mathematical models, the anomalies changed their patterns in ways that can't be coincidental. They formed new equations, responses to our own. If true, this changes everything, said Director Kang slowly. But how do we confirm it? We talk to them, Jisoo said simply, using pure mathematics. Over the next 3 days, Jisoo and her team worked tirelessly to create what they called a mathematical dialogue, a sequence of complex equations that would serve as a greeting and basic introduction. They chose universal constants, prime number sequences, and topological principles that would be recognizable to any intelligence that understood mathematics. On the 4th day, they were ready to test their theory. A small probe, equipped with their mathematical message, would be sent into a stable anomaly. The control room was packed as the test began. The probe approached the swirling distortion, broadcasting its mathematical greeting on all frequencies. "Entering anomaly now," announced a technician. "Message transmission complete." On the screens, they watched as the probe disappeared into the anomaly. For several minutes, nothing happened. The room grew tense. Then, suddenly, the anomaly changed. Its swirling patterns shifted, forming new configurations that flowed and evolved rapidly. "It's responding," Subin exclaimed, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she recorded the changes. "These are perfect mathematical responses to our equations." The anomaly continued to transform, its patterns growing more complex. Data streamed into the computers, filling screen after screen with equations. "Can you understand what it's saying?" Taka asked, his voice hushed. Jisoo stared at the patterns, her mind racing to interpret them. "It's introducing itself," she said slowly. "At least I think that's what it's doing. It's showing us its structure, its nature." For hours, they watched as the anomaly continued its mathematical discourse. Gradually, with Minho and Subin's help, Jisoo began to translate the complex patterns into concepts they could understand. "They call themselves the axiom," she explained to the fascinated audience. "They exist as mathematical entities, conscious patterns in the fabric of reality. They'd been aware of our civilization for some time, but couldn't communicate until we demonstrated understanding of higher mathematics." "Why create navigational hazards?" one of the Confederation officials asked. "They weren't trying to disrupt travel," Jisoo replied. "They were testing species to find ones capable of understanding their language." The anomalies were like puzzles, challenges to solve. As night fell, the exchange continued. The axiom shared more about their nature, how they existed across multiple dimensions, perceiving reality through mathematical relationships rather than physical senses. When the team finally took a break, exhausted but exhilarated, Taka approached Jisoo privately. "Your species continues to surprise us," he said, his tone more humble than she had ever heard it. "We have traveled the stars for millennia, developed technologies beyond anything on Earth, yet we never conceived of mathematics as anything but a tool." "That's the difference between our approaches," Jisoo replied. "Humans have always seen mathematics as a language, perhaps the most fundamental language of all. We study it for its beauty, not just its utility." The next morning, Jisoo made a bold proposal to the assembled officials. "The axiom have invited us to visit them," she announced. "Not physically. Our bodies couldn't exist in their dimensional space. But they've offered to create a kind of interface, a mathematical construct that would allow our minds to experience their reality." "Is that even possible?" Director Kang asked. "With their help, yes," Jisoo replied. "They understand our neural patterns now. They can create mathematical structures that our brains can interpret as sensory information." After much debate, it was decided that a small team would attempt contact. Jisoo, naturally, would lead it, along with Minho, and one brave Confederation scientist who had been fascinated by the discovery. 3 days later, they sat in a specially prepared chamber, surrounded by equipment that would monitor their vital signs and neural activity. The room itself was positioned within a carefully controlled mini-anomaly that the Axiom had created specifically for this purpose. "Ready?" Jisoo asked her companions, who nodded nervously. She activated the sequence they had prepared. Immediately, strange sensations washed over them. Jisoo felt her consciousness expanding, stretching into unfamiliar dimensions. Colors she had never seen before filled her vision, and concepts that had once been abstract suddenly became tangible. And then, they were there, in the realm of the Axiom. Not a physical place, but a mathematical one, where equations flowed like rivers and theorems formed the landscape. Beautiful, perfect patterns surrounded them, constantly shifting and evolving. In this strange realm, the Axiom appeared as complex, dynamic structures, living mathematics, conscious and curious. "We have waited long for minds that could reach us," came a thought that wasn't spoken but understood perfectly. Few species ever develop the ability to see beyond practical application to the fundamental truths of existence. Jisoo understood then why the Axiom had chosen their method of contact. They weren't just testing technological capability, but a special kind of insight. The ability to perceive beauty and meaning in abstract patterns. The magnificent curves of reality, she thought, suddenly understanding the deeper meaning behind their mathematical forms. They're not just beautiful, they're alive. 1 year after first contact with the Axiom, Earth had transformed. The Korea Aerospace Research Institute compound had expanded into the new theoretical sciences headquarters of the Galactic Confederation. Massive domes housing advanced communication equipment dotted the campus, and scientists from 100 worlds worked alongside humans in a great blending of practical and theoretical knowledge. Jisoo stood at the window of her office, watching alien and human researchers cross the courtyard below. She still found it strange sometimes how quickly everything had changed. Earth, once considered a backwater planet, had become the center of a new kind of science. A soft chime announced Hyun's arrival. He carried 2 cups of coffee, just as he had on the night when everything began. "Ready for the big day?" he asked, setting 1 cup on her desk. Jisoo nodded, taking the sip. "The ship is prepared. The team is assembled. All we need now is for the Axiom to open the gateway." Today marked the beginning of the first official diplomatic mission to the Axiom's home dimension. After months of preparation and smaller test visits, a team of 12, 6 humans and 6 Confederation representatives, would spend a full week in direct communication with the mathematical entities. "I still can't believe they chose you to lead it," Hyun said with a smile. "Who else understands both worlds better?" Jisoo replied. "You could have joined us, you know." Hyun shook his head. "Someone needs to manage things here. Besides, I'm still getting used to 3 dimensions. I'm not ready for 7. They walked together to the main auditorium, where representatives from Earth governments and Confederation worlds had gathered for the departure ceremony. The room fell silent as Jisoo took the stage. 1 year ago, she began, her voice clear and confident. "Humanity discovered we are not alone in the universe. First, we met the Galactic Confederation." She nodded toward Taka, who sat in the front row. "Then, through a curious twist of mathematics, we encountered the Axiom, beings who exist as living equations in higher dimensions." The large screen behind her displayed shifting mathematical patterns, the visual representation of Axiom communication that had now become familiar to many. "Today, we begin the next chapter. Our mission will establish permanent diplomatic relations with the Axiom, opening new frontiers of knowledge. Already, our work with them has led to breakthroughs in mathematics, physics, medicine, and communication technology." She looked out at the diverse faces watching her, human, Confederation, and even a few mathematical patterns representing Axiom observers. "This mission represents something profound. The unity of different approaches to understanding the universe. The Confederation's practical genius and humanity's theoretical imagination, joined with the Axiom's mathematical perspective." After the ceremony, the team gathered in the specially designed chamber where the dimensional transfer would take place. They wore simple white uniforms with monitoring equipment sewn into the fabric. Taka approached Jisoo before they began. "I must confess something," he said quietly. "When we first met, I considered humans primitive, fixated on impractical theories instead of useful applications." "I remember," Jisoo smiled. "I was wrong," Taka continued. "Your species' ability to see beauty in abstract patterns, to imagine what cannot be directly observed, this is a rare gift. The Confederation builds wonderful machines, but we had forgotten how to see the mathematics behind them." Jisoo thanked him with a small bow. Their relationship had evolved from condescension to mutual respect over the past year. The countdown began. Around them, equipment hummed as the Axiom's patterns appeared on all screens, growing more complex by the second. Jisoo felt the familiar tingling sensation as her consciousness prepared to expand beyond normal dimensions. A technician called out the final numbers. 3, 2, 1. The world dissolved into pure mathematics. Colors no human eye could normally see flowed around them. Concepts became tangible things. The team's consciousness stretched and adapted to perceive seven-dimensional space. They arrived in what they had come to call the Nexus. Not a physical location, but a mathematical construct where human and Confederation minds could interact with the Axiom. Here, complex equations formed landscapes and theorems became structures. The Axiom themselves appeared as beautiful, intricate patterns that constantly shifted and evolved. "Welcome, friends," came the thought communication from the Axiom representatives. "We have prepared special theorems in your honor." Before them, mathematical expressions blossomed like flowers, each one representing a new concept or discovery. Jisoo recognized some as solutions to problems humans had struggled with for centuries. "These are gifts," the Axiom explained. "Knowledge to help bridge our worlds." For the next several hours, the team engaged in a complicated exchange of ideas. The Axiom were particularly interested in human art and music, concepts they understood mathematically but experienced differently. Minho demonstrated how certain musical compositions followed mathematical patterns, while the Confederation representatives showed how their technology translated abstract concepts into practical applications. Near the end of their first day, one of the Axiom patterns shifted to address Jisoo directly. "You were the first to truly see us," it communicated, "to understand that the curves and patterns were not just phenomena, but language." "I was looking for beauty in the equations," Jisoo replied, "not just solutions. That is why humans are special among physical beings," the Axiom responded. "You seek meaning beyond utility. You touch the magnificent curves of reality not just to use them, but to understand them." As their time drew to a close for the first day, Jisoo stood at what seemed like the edge of their mathematical reality, looking out at the swirling patterns that represented the fuller Axiom dimension beyond. Places they could not yet go, concepts they could not yet grasp. One of the Confederation scientists joined her. "Does it frighten you?" he asked. "How much we still don't understand?" Jisoo smiled. "Just the opposite. It excites me. For all our differences, human, Confederation, Axiom, we share one thing: curiosity. The desire to reach beyond what we know." She gestured toward the beautiful mathematical landscapes around them. "These magnificent curves aren't just equations or navigation paths or communication tools. They're bridges between different ways of seeing reality." The scientist nodded slowly. "I begin to understand why the Axiom chose humans first. You see mathematics as we see engineering, with passion." As they prepared to return to physical space for rest, Jisoo took one last look at the mathematical beauty surrounding them. The universe had turned out to be stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined, filled not just with alien beings of matter and energy, but with conscious mathematics itself. Humanity had found its place not through superior technology or military might, but through its unique ability to see beauty in abstract patterns and to reach for understanding beyond practical application. The title that had once seemed playful now held profound meaning. These magnificent curves of mathematical reality were indeed something to be approached with reverence and wonder.